going back to Zach Davies being designated for assignment, obviously a big part of this isn't just their reaction to his outing yesterday. I know that's kind of maybe the straw a little bit, but I feel like this was a more strategic move that they had planned out prior to his bad outing. Like, if he doesn't have a good outing, we aren't going to utilize him in the playoffs, and we aren't going to, bring him back. So we might as well free up, like a potential roster spot for when the playoffs, for when they have to cut down their roster, so the decision is a little bit easier. I mean, if you're not going to use him, then he's on the roster. Then what's the point, kind of, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Davies, as we talked about yesterday, would have lined up to pitch in game 162, and I think the D-backs reached a point where it was clear they weren't going to let that happen. They just weren't going to let Zach Davies pitch in that game if it mattered. You look at Davies' last 4 starts. It wasn't just that game yesterday, right? 3 innings, 8 hits, 4 runs yesterday. But the start prior to that against the Chicago Cubs, 4 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs. Start prior to that against the Mets, 4 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs. And then before that against a subpar Rockies offense at home at Chase Field, 3 innings, 6 hits, 5 runs. So he's been, this is 4 consecutive starts at this point where Zach Davies has not only been, clipped pretty early in the game, but has just not been very effective. And somehow the D-backs have won. I'm pretty sure all of those games, if I'm not mistaken, because Davies has just gotten crazy amounts of run support this month. But
the opposite of Brandon Pfaadt, as we saw today.
But yeah, once you came to the conclusion that you weren't willing to, ride it out with him in game 162,
right,
and you probably weren't going to use him in big moments in the postseason, then you might as well, I don't know if Justin Martinez necessarily has a high leverage role waiting for him or anything.
Sure.
But he's at least an arm who can give you some length and who can pitch over the next few days, whereas Davies obviously, wouldn't have lined up to pitch again until the final day of the season.
I feel like that was more of the reason too. Isn't necessarily for Justin Martinez in the postseason as much as it's him helping the Diamondbacks get through these bullpen starts that essentially they see coming up on their schedule. This team is not afraid to part ways with veterans that have big contracts on this team, or not even big contracts, but just guys that have been a part of this team that haven't performed well, but typically in the past, due to necessity or due to, like Madison Bumgarner's case, due to his size of his contract and how important he is to the franchise, they weren't willing to really part ways, the way that they've kind of cut guys this season. Yeah. And I have Lindsey Smith over here giggling about me saying doo-doo. So that's something you guys needed to know was going on in the background. But yes, April 20th, they DFA Madison Bumgarner, much to our surprise. And honestly, these other guys, I think, would have been very, very surprising had the Diamondbacks not done the Madison Bumgarner move. I felt like after that, all bets were off. If you weren't contributing to this team any longer, they weren't going to be able to keep you on the roster. Carson Kelly DFA'd on August 13th. Nick Ahmed on September 7th, and now Zach Davies on September 27th. And to be honest, the Diamondbacks have continued to improve when they've moved on. And it's not huge improvements, but it really is one of those things that they have so much young talent within their organization ready to go that they might as well get them then their experience in this game started and them contributing, rather than continue to let a guy that has consistently shown that they're not performing at the same level they once did, have that roster spot.
Madison Bumgarner, right? He only got 4 starts this year, but he was 0-3 with a 10.26 ERA. The D-backs just didn't really have much of a choice at that point, right? With how many young arms they had who were all still healthy at the time, it just didn't make sense to keep giving Bumgarner the ball. You move forward to Nick Ahmed, who, of course, that just happened a few weeks ago. That's the one out of these 4 veteran DFA moves that I think could be questioned maybe to some degree. Jordan Lawler has had his struggles, and, Nick Ahmed has some experience, and maybe you trust him defensively a little bit more
for sure
in big moments.
And it's not like Lawler has been producing in a way that makes you, like, in one way or another. Like, he's had some great defensive plays, and his arm is so strong that even when he makes minor mistakes, he can still make up with it with strong throws. But and again, he's made some amazing defensive plays already. But we saw that on Nick. Nick was able to make some very, very good defensive plays consistently, and at times his bat was better, right, than Jordan's has been.
Yeah, I mean, neither of them have hit much, frankly. I mean, I guess there's not a huge difference there. But yeah, maybe
the experience is definitely a benefit.
Maybe at this point, the D-backs wouldn't hate to have Nick Ahmed's glove on the roster. I don't know. That was the decision they made, and I think we all still understand why they made it. Carson Kelly, he just really struggled this year offensively and defensively. There was just such a huge gap between him and Gabby Moreno. It just didn't make sense for the D-backs to be giving Carson, that degree of playing time. And even, him versus Jose Herrera or now Sebi Zavala, not necessarily a huge difference there either. So, I mean, the D-backs have had to make some difficult decisions this year. And I think some would argue they've made those decisions a little bit later than they should have with some of these guys. But they did make those decisions. And I mean, there's not that many playoff contenders out there that, like going into the season had 4 pretty key players penciled in that by the end of the year were DFA'd because they just didn't perform during the season. And that's the case with all 4 of these guys.